After being falsely imprisoned, a man seeks revenge on the cop who framed him, only to fall for his enemy's girlfriend. Ilya's mother refuses to let him out after he failed his exams. He asserts that he only failed Roman philology, but promises to retake it in 2 weeks. Still, his mother forbids him from leaving until he passes all his exams. Ilya switches tactics by showering his mother with love, hoping that this will convince her. This doesn't work as the woman reminds him how hard she worked to get him into a good university. With that, she tells him to go to his room and her son laughs coldly before relenting. As his mother watches over the hallway, Ilya speaks to his friend over the phone, complaining about her guarding him. This has the woman feeling guilty. The man then lets his frustration out on his self-portrait sketch. Suddenly, he hears his mother go into the bathroom, so Ilya quickly gets dressed only for her to catch him. She tries to take his coat, but the stubborn man yanks it, causing her to stumble. He apologizes for hurting her, yet he still heads out the door. Finally out, Ilya meets with his girlfriend Vera and fawns over her while on the train. Soon, they're at the club with their friend Seryoga. When Ilya moves away to get drinks, however, the authorities suddenly raid the club and apprehend Vera for suspicion of possessing illegal items. Ilya tries to defend his girlfriend, but Officer Pyotr mocks him. When Ilya still won't relent, Pyotr has the man arrested for resisting. He's taken to the back of the club where they discover a bag of substances in his pockets. Ilya asserts that it's not his, but Pyotr laughs at the panicked man before formally arresting him. 7 years later, Ilya is released from prison, only to learn that his mother passed away 2 days ago. In denial, Ilya searches the apartment for her and later calls the hospital, who confirm her passing. He then finds his room kept how it was the night he left, including the sketch he drew that night. He also finds soup that his mother made before her passing, which he mournfully eats. A drunk Ilya later visits Vera, but she reminds him that they've broken up and she's had a life since then. She asserts that she didn't ask for this help when she got arrested, but the man defends that he couldn't just let them take her fearing what they'd do to her. Vera, however, reveals that all the police did was search her before letting her go. Eventually, Seryoga visits his friend, still confused as to why he was arrested in the first place. A cold Ilya dismisses that it was because Pyotr wanted to. He then admits that he wanted to end himself as soon as he got locked up, but his mother told him that they couldn't meet in the afterlife if he did. He then borrows his friend's phone to track down Pyotr through social media, seeing the man living the life he could have had. Just then, someone messages Seryoga's phone, so the man excuses himself since he has to return to his kids, promising to see him again over the weekend. With his mother gone and his girlfriend moved on, Ilya focuses his energy on the man who ruined his life. He goes to a club that Pyotr posted about online and approaches him, though the cop doesn't remember him. Taking this chance, Ilya pretends to be someone to whom Pyotr sold substances, and his bluff pays off as the officer takes him under a dark fire escape to make a sale. When they get there, however, Ilya reveals that he was the man whom he set up 7 years ago. This doesn't deter Pyotr, who just mockingly tells the man to go back to his mother. This infuriates Ilya, so he starts beating him, blaming him for his mother's death. When Pyotr reveals his gun, the man kicks it away. Pyotr takes his phone to call for help next, but Ilya punches him again, causing him to drop it. The man then slams his head against the nearby stairs, accidentally killing him. Ilya panics at what he did. He makes his escape, only to return upon realizing that he can go back to prison if someone finds out. With that, he pockets Pyotr's phone and drops the body into a manhole. At home, he hurriedly cleans up the blood but stops when he hears a phone ringing. Only then does he remember pocketing Pyotr's phone. Overwhelmed with the night's events, Ilya collapses on his couch. He wakes up the next day and finds Pyotr's gun on his table, not recalling that he took it last night as well. He hides it, then checks the man's phone, recalling the pin code he was typing last night. With this, he accesses Pyotr's messages, seeing one from his client whom the man was supposed to sell last night. He replies to the sender to make it seem like the man is still alive. Ilya continues snooping at the messages, discovering one from Pyotr's supplier whom he's supposed to meet next week. A man named Dennis calls the phone, but Ilya rejects it and opens another message from a client named Maga who's offering 300,000 euros for Pyotr's product. The phone runs out of battery, so Ilya heads out to buy a charger but hides the gun inside a boot before leaving. When he steps out, he finds the funeral home's representative, reminding him to collect his mother's body from the morgue. He excuses that he doesn't have the money to bury his mother yet before leaving. Ilya then heads out to buy a charger, and after charging the phone, he receives a voicemail from Pyotr's mother who's worried about her son and someone named Nina. To dissuade her from calling again, Ilya texts the woman, claiming to be on an assignment so he can't talk. For the rest of the day, Ilya can only think about Pyotr's death, even updating his self-portrait to mirror his ruined impression of himself. In the evening, Pyotr's mother messages him again, asking about Nina, so Ilya looks for her on the man's phone. He learns that Nina is Pyotr's girlfriend who recently broke up with him. He then watches videos of Nina and Pyotr, wondering if this should have been his life with Vera. In one video, a drunk Nina started dancing and singing alluringly, only to stumble. Suddenly, Dennis calls the phone again, and Ilya rejects it. However, the man texts, wondering what assignment he was claiming to be on. He also threatens Pyotr for ignoring him. He calls again, so Ilya goes to the bathroom and continuously flushes the toilet, pretending to be a sick Pyotr. Dennis buys this but reminds Pyotr to pick up supplies for him on Monday. He also sends his regards to Pyotr's father before ending the call. Curious, Ilya checks the phone about Pyotr's father, who's apparently a general major. In a video, Pyotr's family had dinner with Lieutenant Major Boris and his daughter Ksenia. However, he also learns that Pyotr's father disowned him recently after an argument. This sends Ilya into another panic, as his father's position means that he'll likely be executed for Pyotr's murder instead of going to prison. He heads to a liquor store to drown his anxiety but finds that the place already closed. Pissed, he starts kicking the door, only to alert a nearby officer. Quickly, Ilya races away with the cops on his tail, refusing to get apprehended again. He manages to escape into an apartment building and waits there until the cops move away. While he waits, he reads how Nina and Pyotr broke up when the former learned of her boyfriend's relationship with Ksenia. The next day, Ilya finally goes to the hospital, though he repeats that he doesn't have the money to bury his mother yet. The coroner just tells him that he'll be charged if he doesn't collect her after 7 days. The son then sees his mother's body and apologizes for being late, promising to sort out everything soon. Before he leaves, a doctor recommends doing her funeral at a chapel since his mother was religious. However, Ilya doesn't think it matters since everyone ends up in the same place. As he's heading home, he passes by a travel agency and wonders about traveling. The agent, Galya, attends to him, though he admits that he doesn't have a passport and was recently released from prison. Still, Galya calls her contact and confirms that since Ilya served his sentence in full, he's free to travel. With that, she gives him the estimated expenses for his travel and gives him the number of her contact in the Federal Migration Service to process his passport. This gives the man hope that he has more to look forward to. However, as he steps out, he receives a voicemail from Pyotr's mother, telling him that Nina is scheduled for surgery. With this, he checks the messages again and discovers an email, where the cop admits to his girlfriend that he wasn't ready to be a father. He also feared that he'd be worse than his father, who placed so many expectations on him. Ilya reads on, finding a more human side in Pyotr, as the man admitted that he loved Nina but couldn't imagine being happy raising a child. He believed that people only conceived by accident and pretended to be happy until they finally found a way to manage the facade. He saw himself as a mess but realized that maybe finding a way to manage being a father could change that. Out of curiosity, Ilya goes to the hospital where Nina is, learning from her doctor that she's scheduled to have her conception ended. After this, Ilya passes by Nina's room, seeing her for the first time. He ducks out of the way as he continues Pyotr's last message, revealing that he did change his mind about the child. He wanted to raise a family with Nina even if it meant being disowned by his parents. This message, however, wasn't sent since Pyotr received a call from Dennis after typing it. Ilya finishes the message for him and sends it. He then sits in the hallway, contemplating what to do when the phone rings as Nina starts calling her ex. He quickly rejects the call and goes for the exit, barely missing Nina, who thinks Pyotr was outside after hearing his phone ring. While on a bus, he watches a video of Nina when the woman sends a voicemail, declaring that she's keeping her child. He then assures Pyotr's mother that Nina's okay. Ilya then visits Seryoga and his wife Stasha. While drinking with his friend, Ilya hesitantly asks to borrow money, promising to pay it back immediately. Seryoga goes to his wife for approval, but Stasha refuses since they need the money for their kids. Overhearing them argue, Ilya decides to leave. He heads back to the place where Pyotr died. With the car conveniently parked beside the manhole, he manages to open it without being seen. He then searches Pyotr's body for cash and also finds some substances in his pocket. Just then, the couple who owns the car returns, surprised that the manhole's open. Quickly, Ilya moves Pyotr's body out of sight just before they look inside. Thinking that it was left open by accident, the man covers the hole to prevent accidents. The couple then enjoys some private time in the car with the radio on, which Ilya can hear from underground. This leaves him trapped, so he starts talking to Pyotr's body, assuring him that he talked Nina out of getting rid of their child. The phone then receives a message from Pyotr's mother, so he reads it to the corpse. Given the turn of events, his mother now encourages her son to pursue law like he wanted, acknowledging that he is not happy following in his father's footsteps. The mother also recounts how Pyotr stressed about the college student he sent to jail, but his father ordered him not to discuss it any further. Her message then reveals that Pyotr's father was the one who pushed him into pursuing Ksenia to appeal to her father. The general major also disliked Nina since she was from a small town. Eventually, Ilya manages to escape the sewers, though he's now troubled by the idea that Pyotr wasn't as bad as he thought. Still, he needs to save himself, so he messages one of Pyotr's clients offering him supplies to get money. Still feeling guilty, he sends an apology to Pyotr's father in hopes of giving the man's mother some relief. However, the general major replies with obscenities, blaming him for ruining his career when he dumped Ksenia for Nina. The next day, Ilya receives messages from Dennis, insisting on Pyotr to receive the supplies that are being shipped to them. He also sends him a video of when Pyotr got involved in a car accident after he drove while under the influence with Ksenia. The man tried to use his father's position to escape, only to meet Dennis, who apparently outranked his father. This was how Pyotr ended up under Dennis' command. The video is followed by Dennis threatening to release the video to ruin Pyotr's life, along with his father's and Boris's careers. With this looming over his head, Ilya meets with a client, Anton, and claims to be Pyotr's middleman. Anton becomes friendly with Ilya, even treating him to food and inviting him to a fun evening. The man refuses and insists on making the transaction. However, Anton scolds him for trying to take the supply out in the open. He warns him that people might be watching, even mentioning how he keeps checking if his phone's location is off since some people can hack and trace it. Instead, he invites him to do the transaction in the bathroom. With the money finally in hand, Ilya tries to contact the migration office to process his papers, only for Dennis to interrupt him again, threatening to find him if he doesn't show up. Remembering Anton's claims about hacking, he puts the phone in airplane mode. Ilya finally works on getting his passport. After this, he sends Dennis a message to claim that Pyotr got lost out of town after a night of binging. He then turns the cell phone off so it doesn't get tracked. When he gets home, he sees his mother's old bedroom door closing. Confused, he checks and finds it locked. In his unstable mind, he thinks his mother's punishing him since she warned him against leaving that night. He rants that it was Pyotr's fault, then adds that it was both their parents' faults for not raising them right. He asserts that no one has to pay for everything since he wants to live and not go back to prison. The troubled man yells his frustration out on his mother, but when he finally pries the door open, he sees the bedroom empty, reminding him that the woman is gone. Throughout the rest of the night, Ilya gets anxious and paces around. Eventually, he turns the phone back on and replies to Pyotr's father, revealing that his son and Nina are having a child. This prompts the general major to call, but Ilya rejects it and sends a voicemail, castigating the man for judging Nina and declaring his love for her. He then receives a seductive photo from Nina, who starts flirting as she thinks she's made amends with her boyfriend. As he contemplates his and Pyotr's life, he recalls Maga, the client who offered 300,000 euros for the product along with Dennis' recent threat. To clear his head, Ilya watches a video of Nina and Pyotr during a private time, taking the chance to satisfy himself. The next day, he texts Maga to claim that he'll send a middleman to deliver the product. However, Pyotr's mother already found out that her son isn't involved in an assignment right now, so she worries about where he is. This also reaches Nina, who leaves a message, demanding her boyfriend call to prove that he's okay. With no choice, Ilya schedules a date with Nina. That evening, he sits at an opposite table watching Nina while replying to her messages as Pyotr. He even proposes to her through text and sees Nina surprised and happily typing her reply. Just then, Dennis texts him that he's located him and soon enough, he sees a thug searching the place for Pyotr. With that, Ilya switches the phone to airplane mode and casually leaves the place, remaining undetected since none of Pyotr's associates know him. He goes to an underground club next and plays a video of Nina dancing. He dances along, pretending that he's with her as he loses himself to the music. Eventually, he gets thrown out of the club for getting too rowdy. He then turns the phone on and receives a voicemail from Maga, who gives him instructions for their meetup tomorrow. With this, Ilya sends a message to Pyotr's father, declaring that his son has proposed to Nina so their child will know that they could have been a family. Bothered by his choice of words, the general major asks what's wrong and invites his son and future daughter-in-law to discuss things during his birthday. Seeing this as Pyotr's father reaching out to make amends, Ilya replies with a thank you to him before dropping the phone into the manhole, returning it to its owner. The next day, as he picks up his passport, Ilya sees on the news that Pyotr's body was found. Not wanting to risk getting caught, he immediately calls the travel agency to book him the next flight to Colombia. He then meets with Maga, who's surrounded by his guards and associates. Ilya claims that he's only there to pick up the money while Pyotr will deliver the supplies later. With no question, Maga has his guard hand him 300,000 euros, though he warns that if the product isn't delivered in the afternoon, he'll send someone for Pyotr's girlfriend. This horrifies Ilya, worrying him as he walks out of the hotel. Unwilling to put her at risk, Ilya returns to the hotel and tells Maga's bodyguard that the deal is off since Pyotr was murdered. He then returns the money to ensure that Nina is safe. Back to being broke, he goes to the travel agency to cancel his trip. Galya attempts to give him cheaper destinations, and he delights in listening to her talk about the wonderful sights he may never see. He promises to come back later when he's decided, then thanks her before leaving. He visits his mother in the morgue next, though he still can't take her. Instead, he kisses her forehead and says goodbye. When he gets home later, he finds a black van parked outside. Despite this, he returns to his apartment, recalling the argument he had with his mother the night he went to the club. Surrendering to his fate, he pours a bowl of his mother's last soup and eats. Not long after, he hears the doorbell and sees cops parked outside the building. Still, he finishes his meal while replaying his argument with his mother in his head, now realizing that he's the only one to blame for his predicament. Finally, he takes Pyotr's gun and rearranges his mother's religious items before sitting down and aiming at his head. Before pulling the trigger, however, he recalls his mother's belief about the afterlife. Grasping at the hope that he'll see her again, Ilya instead shouts at the officers and fires warning shots to scare them. He then returns to his sketch and erases the messy lines he covered himself with. At last, Ilya opens his window and starts shooting at the officers, prompting them to shoot him dead. His blood splatters at his sketch of himself, depicting the ruined person he's become after not listening to his mother. Years later, Nina and her daughter visit Ilya's grave as the former has figured out that he was the one who convinced her to keep her child, not Pyotr.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.